Hey guys, it's Adriatic. A while ago, I made a 1 damage boost tip for every ally, and that video did pretty well, but it's kinda outdated since I did it in Overwatch 1, so I figured it would be a good idea to bring this idea back and remake that video. So with all that out of the way, let's just start with the tanks. Starting off with D.va, it's best to pocket her when she's out of mech actually with damage boost to ensure that she gets her mech back faster. Damage boost amplifies your allies' damage by 30%, or in other words, they do 30% more damage per shot they hit, which means that they get 30% more ult charge on the shot than they would have otherwise. Keeping this in mind, it's good to damage boost the baby D.va so she gets her mech back quicker than she would otherwise. This is especially important now in 5v5 since she's the only tank, and pocketing her like this also allows you to help ensure that she doesn't die. For Doomfist, it's good to swap to heal beam while he's blocking, as he won't be doing any damage in this state and then damage boost him otherwise. Also, since most of Doomfist's abilities require a wind-up animation, try to attach your beam to these when you see them. This is very important for his empowered punch, for example, so look for when he's empowered and prepare to try to attach your beam when you see him charging a punch or when you see him using slam mid-air. Don't be afraid of your beam breaking, as even if it does, it'll stay attached long enough for his damage to be amplified, so don't feel pressured to go in with him just for this. For Junkerqueen, it's good to boost her ultimate, and since she stands still before her ult, it's usually pretty easy to quickly attach her beam then. It's also especially important to keep the damage boost attached throughout the full duration of her bleed. I'm gonna go more in depth real quick on how damage boost affects Junkerqueen's bleed. Junkerqueen's passive is that her abilities apply a bleed effect to the enemies she hits, which heals her for the amount of damage that the bleed does. Because of this, boosting her bleed effect actually also increases the amount of healing she receives. This enhanced bleed/healing effect happens as long as damage boost is actively attached to Junkerqueen. Detaching your beam from her while the bleed effect is active will stop boosting the bleed, so essentially what this means is detaching from her will only boost a portion of the bleed. However, this is also true for the fact that you can start boosting her bleed after it's already started. You don't have to boost it from the start, so even if you miss the initial axe swing, knife, or even rampage, you can still quickly attach your beam to her to boost the remaining duration of the bleed. All of this is why it's best to boost the full duration of her bleed and swap to someone else or heal after the fact, unless she absolutely needs more healing, of course. Orisa is fairly simple. Try to track her spear cooldown and damage boost that. If you see her spear someone, quickly swap to her so she can finish them off. Also, damage boosting her ultimate allows her to confirm kills at a lower charge percentage, minimizing the time enemies have to escape from it. Really not a lot of unique tips for Ramattra. I try to pocket him when damage boost when he's in Nemesis form, as his punches pass through barriers and do quite a bit of damage. Of course this applies to his ultimate, and it's usually a good idea to just pocket him through that. The obvious tip for Rein is to boost his fire strikes. However, if your Rein is not communicating with you, this can be tricky and hard to track in time. I like to damage boost him as he's rounding a corner or something. Reading his movement and body language can tell you when he's about to go for one. If you boost one, stick around and try to boost the other, as most Rein players tend to throw them back to back, and if you miss the first one, try to catch the second. RoadHog is really simple, just try to boost the hooks when you see them, especially now since they don't one-shot. Sigma is an interesting damage boost target because his ult is affected by it in a way you may not expect. Sigma's ult has 2 portions to it, the initial lift up and the slam. The only portion of it that's damage boosted is the initial lift. The slam will not get damage boosted. Knowing this, in many scenarios it may be a better idea to just boost someone else after you boost the initial lift, depending on the situation. A good tip for Winston is to boost his jump pack damage. When you see your Winston leaping, quickly damage boost him to boost his landing damage. Most Winston players also melee as they land for added burst damage, so damage boosting this can help him quickly burst down a squishy he may be diving onto. If you see your friendly Hammond grapple to initiate or engage in onto a team, quickly attach your beam onto him and roll through the enemy. Similarly to Doomfist, don't feel obligated to follow him as he'll probably leave you behind, so just attach your beam and let it break naturally. Chances are he'll run into people before it breaks. Also, look for pile drive and boost that. Zarya is an overall great damage boost pocket, especially when she's high charge. I'd say she's actually one of the heroes that you definitely want to prioritize over your DPS if she's doing the most, and since Graviton is such a good ultimate, pocketing her can help her get it faster. Everyone knows Ashe is a great damage boost pocket, but so is Bob. In fact, Bob actually gives you ult charge for damage boost, whereas healing doesn't. So if Bob is in a good position, you should damage boost him. I also encourage that you don't heal Bob because there's honestly no point to, since he has so much HP. If he's getting burst down, your healing won't save him. Also, a niche tip that's good to know is that you can actually push Bob by walking into him, which can be helpful if he's in an awkward spot. For Bastion, it's best to just try to boost his sentry form when you see it and track that cooldown. Typically other heroes are better targets otherwise. You can also boost his ultimate. For Cassidy, boosting Deadeye actually makes his skulls charge 30% faster. so this is good to keep in mind in allowing him to be even quicker on the draw. Echo is a hero you'll typically be pocketing most of the game, and damage boost synergizes well with all of her abilities, but it's good to make an effort to especially make sure to damage boost and pocket her when she's duplicated, to ensure that she gets her copied hero's ult even faster. The most obvious tip for Genji would be to pocket Blade. This can be hard to keep up with though, especially with the nerf GA, so don't be afraid to combo Valk and Blade if those are the only ults you plan to use in a fight. I don't typically damage boost Hanzo a whole lot, but tracking and boosting Storm Arrow is always helpful in confirming eliminations. It's also important to note that you can't boost his dragons, however, you can boost the initial arrow that is shot, but once it expands and turns into the dragons, the effect won't be boosted. Boost Junkrat down tight chokes or when you see him spamming onto a shield to help a shield break. You can't boost his trap or tire, so don't bother. Mei doesn't really benefit a whole lot from damage boost, however boosting her free spray can be helpful in confirming kills on lower health enemies. It's also a good idea to try and boost Blizzard so that she does more damage. A good way to predict this is to boost her when she's near enemies and an ice block, as many Mei players will come out of cryo and instantly throw their ult. Similarly to Junkerqueen, boosting Reaper also boosts the amount of healing he receives from his passive. Keep this in mind as it can allow you to be a little more aggressive with your damage boost on him, especially when he's ulting. There's not a lot to say about Pharah since it's Pharah, but I think with the new healing changes, it's best to not be afraid to boost her when she's missing HP because you now heal more when allies are below 50%. Just keep in mind the enemy comp and what breakpoint thresholds to keep her HP above. Sojurn doesn't benefit from damage boost outside of charge shots in the same way she did before, since she now receives a set amount of charge from each shot, regardless of the amount of damage she does. However, her rail shot still one-shots 200 HP heroes with damage boost, so it's good to look out for when she's high or fully charged, which you can tell because she'll be glowing. So look to boost that over anything else along with her ultimate. Ideally though, you should probably just be sticking with her a majority of the game. Soldier is a great damage boost target since you can be more aggressive boosting him since he has the ability to heal himself. This pairs great with the recent healing changes, and don't forget to always damage boost his visor. You can't damage boost Sombra's EMP anymore, but it's useful to attach your beam to her instantly after she uses it anyways, as she gets 40% damage amplification to hacked targets, and this actually stacks with your damage boost. Aside from the EMP, it's good to look for when she's hacking targets in general to help her burst them down quickly. Boosting Symmetra when she's high charge will help her melt through enemy squishies really quickly. Similarly to the Doomfist and Hammond situations, if you see her go through a TP, you can attach her beam to her quickly as she goes through. She'll likely TP back pretty quickly, so don't worry if your beam breaks. I'd say not to follow her unless you're communicating with your sim and she tells you to go with her so you don't get left behind. Torbjorn's ult is kinda weird in the sense that you can't boost the whole duration of it, but you can boost the initial impact damage. It's still good to boost him during it anyways though. Other than that, it's good to boost him during overload due to his increased health and fire rate. For Tracer, just like I've stated before, your beam stays attached for a little bit, so try boosting her as she engages in since she'll keep the beam for a little bit. I don't typically follow Tracer and boost her because of how mobile she is, but if she's playing anywhere near you or within reach, she's always a great damage boost target and highly underrated one in my opinion. If you're using Valkyrie and she's on a flank or engaged in combat, boosting her from a safe position is always a good idea. Widowmaker benefits from damage boost in the sense that damage boost allows her to one-shot at a lower charge rate, so this means she doesn't need to be scoped in for as long. With this in mind, I like to always attach my beam to Widow as she goes for a grapple shot, as it allows her to take her shot earlier than she would otherwise need to. When on a sleep someone, in most situations it's better to damage boost her rather than pull out the pistol, especially in the case of Tracer who can be one-shot comboed with a damage amped nade and a primary fire. Also, it's good to keep in mind that damage boost and Nano's damage amplification stack, so make sure to always pocket Nano boosted allies. Bap is actually a really good damage boost target because of his weapon, so make sure to boost him pretty often. It's just best to keep in mind that if you are damage boosting him and he's shooting people, that's both of your supports focused on damage, so keep that in mind when it comes to your team's healing needs. For Brigitte, she's not the best damage boost target, but if you see her flailing on someone, it doesn't hurt, especially if she's peeling for one of your teammates. Similarly to Brig, Kiriko is usually not a good default target, but it can be useful to boost her when she's dueling someone. It's also good to keep in mind that she one-shot headshots heroes like Tracer if she's damage boosted. For Lucio, just swap off Mercy. Why on earth are you playing Mercy, Lucio? Just kidding. Kinda. But, I mean, he's not the best damage boost target. You can try boosting or spam or, let him heal between fights so that he builds beat faster, but otherwise, it could be good to pocket a Reddit Lucio if you see him diving onto someone like a Widow, but it's really only applicable in Valkyrie because of how separated you both would probably be playing anyways. For some reason you're playing a different game mode where you can have 2 Mercies on your team, you could have one of them hard heal and one of them hard damage boost, since Mercy's damage amplification doesn't stack with itself, but you could also just pocket 2 different heroes or just damage boost her battle Valk. Similar to the Rein Fire Strike tip, try to look for when she's going to throw a damage orb. Boosting the orb doesn't increase the amount of damage it does, but rather the raw DPS of it. This is because damage orb does a set amount of damage and damage boost only makes it drain faster. This can be helpful in doing more damage to one target at a time. Boosting her ult is also always beneficial. Zenyatta is a pretty underrated damage boost target in my opinion. It's always great to boost his secondaries, which are easy to do since you can see him charging it up. Just quickly attach your beam to him before he fires it and you're good. And that's all from me for today. I hope some of these tips are helpful for you and that they improve your damage boost usage and uptime. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more Mercy content. Thanks for watching and have a great day.